That's it. All started when Claire, a 22-year-old college student, moved into a small off-campus apartment in the quiet town of Ashland, Oregon. It was her first time living alone, a studio on the second floor of an older building that had once been a single-family home. It wasn't fancy, but it had charm. Creaky hardwood floors, a little balcony, and just enough space for Claire's books, plants, and a sense of independence. The rent was cheap. Too cheap, actually, but Claire chalked it up to good timing and a generous landlord who said, "Not many folks want an upstairs studio." The first sign that something was wrong came on her third night there. As she was lying in bed, scrolling through her phone, she heard a faint sound, almost like breathing, coming from the wall vent above her closet. She paused her music, listened. Nothing. Old building, she told herself. Pipes, air ducts, whatever. But then it happened again. A soft exhale. Deliberate. Human. Claire got up, grabbed a chair, and climbed up to peek inside the vent with her phone flashlight. Nothing but darkness and dust. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was in there. The noises continued every night. Breathing, sometimes scraping. Once, she swore she heard a whisper. She told her landlord, who brushed it off. Old place like this, the vents echo weird. Could be mice, but Claire wasn't convinced. One night, she stayed up, lights off, just watching the vent. At exactly 2:41 a.m., she heard a sharp metallic click, then silence. The next morning, she found one of her kitchen drawers slightly open, a drawer she knew she had closed. That's when she bought a small motion-activated camera. She pointed it toward the hallway and left it recording overnight. The next morning, she reviewed the footage. At 2:44 a.m., the camera picked up movement. A tall figure, barefoot, shirtless, emerged from the hallway vent. He moved slowly, almost like he knew the layout of the apartment. He opened the kitchen drawer, took something, and disappeared back into the wall. Claire's hands were shaking as she watched. She called the police immediately. When they arrived, they discovered a hidden crawl space connected to the vent system, just wide enough for a slender adult to move through. Inside, they found food wrappers, a sleeping bag, and a small set of tools. The man had been living inside the walls. He was caught later that day trying to sneak back into the building. He had been a former maintenance worker fired months prior. He never returned his keys. Claire moved out the next morning. She still keeps that vent footage on her phone. As a reminder, she says that the scariest monsters are often just behind the walls. Story 2. The Face at the Window. It was the dead of winter in Michigan. Bitterly cold, snow, knee-deep, and the kind of silence that makes even the faintest creak feel deafening. Olivia, a 34-year-old mother of two, lived with her kids in a modest farmhouse just outside of town. Her husband, a trucker, was gone for days at a time, hauling freight across the state. It wasn't ideal, but they managed. It was during one of his week-long trips that Olivia began to notice something strange. It started with the motion sensor light outside her kitchen window, flickering on randomly at night. The first time, she thought it was just a raccoon. The second time, probably a deer. But then, it started happening every single night, between 2 and 4 a.m., and then came the footprints. One morning, after another night of flickering lights, outside to check. There, in the fresh snow beneath the kitchen window, were boot prints. Human, large, standing in one spot like someone had been watching. She took pictures, called the sheriff. A deputy came by, made some notes, but said unless someone tried to break in, there wasn't much he could do. So Olivia did what any mother would do. She stayed alert, locked every window, kept a baseball bat next to the bed. She even started leaving the hallway light on. But what happened the next night nearly broke her. It was 3:11 a.m. Olivia was awake. Anxiety had taken her sleep. She walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water and paused at the window. The light wasn't on. She flipped the switch and looked out. And there he was, a man, no more than 10 feet from her, standing perfectly still in the snow, just staring. His face was pale, lips parted, no coat, just a dark hoodie. And the most horrifying part, he didn't flinch when she screamed. He didn't move when the lights came on. He just stared. By the time the sheriff arrived 15 minutes later, the man was gone. All that remained were the deep footprints leading from the woods and back into them. Over the next 2 days, Olivia and her kids stayed with her sister. Police increased patrols. Her husband rushed back from his route, but the man never returned. Or so they thought. 3 weeks later, during a routine attic inspection, the HVAC technician found something Olivia will never forget. A makeshift bed, candy, wrappers, and a half-eaten sandwich. Someone had been living in their attic. For how long, no one could say. No one ever found out who he was. Olivia moved the very next month. Story 3. The Answering Machine. Message. This happened in 2005 to a woman named Caitlin, who had recently moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in St. Louis, Missouri. It was her first place alone after graduating college, and while the building was old, she liked the charm. Creaky floors, tall windows, and the faint smell of wood polish in the halls. She worked late evenings at a bookstore and got home around 10 p.m. most nights. Her routine was simple. Shower, eat something light, and unwind with music or a journal before heading to bed. But one night as she walked through her front door, she noticed something odd. Her answering machine light was blinking. Strange. She never gave that number to anyone. In fact, she had only installed the landline because the building's management required it. Curious, she hit play. Caitlin, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Please, just answer. Please. The voice was male. Quiet. Shaky. There was no name. No number on the caller ID. Just unknown. Caitlin froze. She hadn't heard from anyone all day. She called her mom, her friends. No one had left a message. She chalked it up to a wrong number, deleted the message, and tried to forget about it. The next night, she came home, same routine, and the light was blinking again. Why won't you answer me? You're not safe. He knows where you are. This time she didn't delete it. She played it again and again. There was no noise in the background, just silence and that same voice. Low, terrified, desperate. She called the phone company, reported it. They told her the number was untraceable, probably routed through some spoofing service. The next night, another message. He was watching you on the train today. Blue jacket, black gloves. He's getting closer. Caitlin hadn't taken the train in weeks until that day. And yes, there was a man in jacket standing near her the entire ride. She hadn't thought anything of it until now. That's when the paranoia set in. She covered the windows, slept with a knife under her pillow. She started recognizing small things being moved. The bathroom towel folded differently, a glass left slightly off-center on the counter. But the police, they found no signs of forced entry. The messages stopped after 4 nights. No more blinking lights, no more voices. But something even stranger happened next. Caitlin called her mother a week later to tell her the messages had stopped, and her mom said something that chilled her. What messages? You called me last week. You said, don't worry, I'll take care of it soon. Then hung up. I figured you were just tired. Caitlin never made that call. She checked her call log. There it was. 1:34 a.m. Call to her mom's house. Duration 8 seconds. To this day, she doesn't remember picking up the phone that night. She moved out 2 weeks later. The old answering machine. She left it behind. Story 4. The man in the closet. This story came from a woman named Heather, a single mom living in rural Oregon with her 6-year-old son, Eli. They had just moved into an older farmhouse, charming, rustic, and backed by thick pine woods. To Heather, it seemed like the perfect place to start fresh. Eli had his own room, and every night she read him a story, tucked him in, and made sure the closet light was on, just how he liked it. One evening, Heather came home to find Eli sitting on the living room floor, crayons scattered around him. He was drawing, but his face looked pale, focused, unusually quiet for a kid who usually narrated every stroke of his artwork. She leaned over to peek at what he was making. It was a drawing of his bedroom, his bed, the nightstand, and the closet. But what caught her attention was the dark figure scribbled inside the closet. All black, no face, just long stretched limbs and 2 white eyes. Heather chuckled nervously and said, "Who's that supposed to be?" Eli didn't look up. "That's the man who watches me sleep." Her stomach dropped. She pressed gently. "Sweetie, what do you mean?" "He comes out when the light turns off, but he goes away when you come in." Heather tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just an imaginary friend. Maybe he'd seen something scary on TV. Kids are creative, right? But that night when she went to turn off the closet light after Eli fell asleep, something made her stop. She left it on. Over the next few nights, Eli began having nightmares, screaming in the middle of the night, talking in his sleep. "He's in there. Don't open it." One night, Heather walked in and found the closet door wide open, even though she was sure it had been closed. Eli was sitting up, eyes open, but not awake, pointing at the closet. "He says you shouldn't look inside." Heather decided she'd had enough. The next morning, while Eli was at school, she went into the closet, determined to prove it was just empty space. She pulled out boxes, clothes, storage bins, and noticed the back panel seemed loose. She tapped it. It echoed. Behind the panel there was a hidden crawl space, tight, dark, maybe used decades ago for storage. But when she peeled it open and shined her flashlight in, her breath caught in her throat. Inside were empty food wrappers, a dirty blanket, and a set of child-sized shoes. Someone had been in there, living there. The police were called. walls of the house, maybe for weeks, maybe longer, but the person, gone. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. Just one thing was left behind, tucked deep in the crawl space, a crumpled piece of paper, a child's drawing of Eli's bedroom, viewed from inside the closet. Story 5, Behind the Mirror. In 2013, a 30-year-old man named Luis checked into a budget motel in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was in town for a 2-day work conference. The place was cheap, not great, flickering hallway lights, faded carpet, but nothing that raised red flags. Luis was given room 209, a corner room near the end of the hall. It was quiet, little too quiet. That first night as he was brushing his teeth, he noticed something strange. The bathroom mirror had fogged up, but only around the edges. The middle section stayed crystal clear. He rubbed it with a towel. Nothing. It didn't fog like a regular mirror. Weird, he thought, but maybe it was just old. The next night after returning from dinner, he sat on the bed watching TV. But he kept feeling watched, like there was someone else in the room. He turned around more than once, only to find nothing. That uneasy feeling peaked when he walked into the bathroom and saw again that the center of the mirror was perfectly clear, even though the room was steamy from his shower. This time, he leaned in close. Tapping the mirror, he noticed a slight echo, almost like it was hollow behind. That's when he remembered something he'd once read. In some budget hotels, criminals install two-way mirrors. From one side, it looks like a regular mirror. From the other, it's a window. Suddenly cold, he pulled out his phone and did the fingernail test. You place your nail against the mirror. If there's a gap between the nail and its reflection, it's a true mirror. If there's no gap, it might be two-way. There was no gap. Heart pounding, Louis grabbed the edge of the mirror and pulled. To his horror, the mirror shifted slightly. It was mounted on hinges. He yanked harder, and it opened like a door, revealing a dark, hollow space behind it. Inside was a small, windowless room, the size of a closet, with a folding chair, cigarette butts, a crumpled fast food wrapper, and a camera tripod pointed directly through the back of the mirror. Luis stumbled back, shaking. The police were called immediately. They investigated the hidden crawl space and confirmed that it had been used recently. Fingerprints were found, but whoever had been there was already gone. Management claimed ignorance. The room was sealed off. But to this day, room 209 is no longer available for booking. Quietly retired from the system, Luis still can't stay in hotels without checking every mirror first. Story 6. The Disappearing Woman of Silver Pine Hill. In 1998, Karen Mitchell, a 17-year-old high school student in Eureka, California, vanished while walking from her aunt's store to her part-time job, just a few blocks away. Multiple witnesses saw her that day, smiling, chatting, completely normal, but she never arrived. An investigation was launched immediately. Flyers were posted, search parties organized, but no trace of Karen was found. Not her bag, not a shoe, not a single clue. The trail went cold fast. Years passed. People assumed the worst, and Karen's case quietly became another unsolved missing person file. Until 2010, a woman showed up at a small urgent care clinic in a different town, Silver Pine Hill. about 200 miles away. She had no ID, looked disoriented, and was barefoot. She claimed her name was Karen Mitchell. She said she'd been living off-grid and had decided it was time to come back. The clinic staff notified the police. Fingerprints were taken. Here's the thing. They matched. This was Karen Mitchell, the same Karen who'd vanished over a decade earlier. When asked where she had been, she gave vague, fragmented answers. Something about being taken in by a group, moving from state to state, not remembering exact places. She refused to name anyone, claimed she had been protected. What she did say was chilling. There were rules. You couldn't speak unless spoken to. You couldn't leave unless someone took your place. The police tried to press for more, but she shut down. She said she was tired and just wanted to rest. That night, Karen was placed in temporary care until social services could step in. A nurse walked her to a room and helped her settle in. But by morning, Karen was gone. Again, security footage showed nothing. No one saw her leave, no open windows, no forced doors. Her room looked untouched, like she had evaporated. Since then, she's never been seen again, not a single confirmed sighting. Some believe she had been brainwashed by a cult. Others think she was suffering from a dissociative mental condition. But the fingerprints, the exact match, that can't be explained away easily. And perhaps the most unsettling part, her original missing person case was reopened. But now, there are 2 disappearances. One girl lost twice, and still no answers. Story 7, The Forest That Takes People. The case of missing hiker, Tyler Banks. In 2019, Tyler Banks, 28-year-old avid hiker from Oregon, went on a solo camping trip into the Mount Hood National Forest, a sprawling, densely wooded area known for its natural beauty and its strange disappearances. Tyler was experienced, former Army. He told his family he'd be gone for 3 days, camping at a remote site only accessible by foot. He checked in with park rangers, logged his route, and even brought a GPS tracker. Everything about this trip was planned. But when the 3rd day passed and no one heard from him, concern turned to panic. Rescue teams went in, helicopters flew over the area. K-9 units were deployed. The only thing they found, his campsite, perfectly intact. Tent zipped shut, food still sealed. Even his phone and wallet were sitting on a flat rock beside a cold fire pit. But no sign of Tyler. The GPS tracker, still active, but it showed something disturbing. On the 2nd day, at around 3:12 a.m., the device moved half a mile in 4 minutes, straight uphill, through thick, impassable forest. No trails, no way a person could run that terrain in that time. Then, it stopped, and that's where rescuers found it, wedged in the fork of a tree, about 20 feet off the ground. There were no footprints, no claw marks, nothing. The strangest part, locals came forward and told the media, this isn't the first time. That exact area, within a 5-mile radius, has seen at least 9 disappearances over the past 40 years. Hikers, campers, hunters, all gone without a trace. Same M.O., abandoned campsites, personal belongings untouched, and the native tribes who once lived near Mount Hood, they called that patch of forest the place where the trees speak, and believed it was inhabited by forest spirits that could lure people away, confusing their minds with whispers and illusions. One tribal elder said something chilling when asked about Tyler's case. He heard something that called his name, and he answered. To this day, Tyler Banks has never been found. No bones, no clothing,